That lady sure is having a hard time deciding whether or not to go through that gate, isn't she? Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome, welcome, welcome to, I'm just going to call you Manzer because I will absolutely butcher your first name. Please forgive me. Welcome in. Salvador, how you doing? Catheda, hi, sweetie. Thanks for all your help. And she's always out there sharing it and promoting everybody's channels. We certainly appreciate you and all your help. One of our wonderful mods. Hello, all my other mods in here. Hello, Renice. I saw Ted. Hello, Uncommon Belief. How you doing, Lindsay? I saw you. Hello, Jennifer. I think I saw you coming in. Hey, hey, hey. So welcome, welcome. Hey, back, Ted. If you guys didn't know, I'm going to get Steve in here, and then I'm going to tell Steve just in case. I'm sure he knows. I mean, how can you keep a secret from this community, right? So, anyhow, we had a lot to get into tonight. We've got St. Valentines Day Massacre. This is like I've been firing on all cylinders, since I started researching all this stuff. So, and I've been doing it a very long time because, like I told you last night, I took a lot of it in high school, and anytime I could get extra, you know, when people were doing home ec and stuff like that, I was doing violence in America and the rise and fall of organized crime. I don't know where they got the fall from. It's just the rise, fall, rise, fall, rise, fall, rise, fall, rise. But I guess it depends on what specifically you're talking about. There's definitely been changes. There's definitely been huge shifts, and not just within, but how it is, and how we go about it with technology and everything involved too. There was definitely an era of a time when we kind of look back at it and think, wow, that was something else. The Capones, the Diamond Jim Colosimo's, the Dillingers, and name them all, Babyface Nelson, Machine Gun Kelly, so many, Johnny Torrio, just you could just spit them off all day. But they all had a story, the Bonnie and Clydes. And on this channel, when we do a dig, try to do a dig, I try to, either with somebody a collab or just trying to understand it. The reason I do it this way is because these are stories that I've heard all my lifetime. And for decades, I would, just like everybody else, you'd hear something and you think, okay, well, that must be fact, and let's put that in the story. Or the story morphs over time and becomes a whole different story. And we forget that these were real people and it's a real history. And we talked a lot last night about how important it is to get the facts right, because how are you going to learn from anything, or how are you going to learn anything from a situation, or what not to do, or how to do something, or how to help a community or your town or your freaking world you're on. If you just keep repeating the same stuff and the same mistakes over and over again. We got it. In order to learn from things and better things, we have to learn from our mistakes, right? And from our triumphs. And a lot of people get a really bad rap, and we look at that in the paranormal community as well, as like, say, a ghost or somebody that's coming back. And Steve and I were talking about this the other night, so I want to bring him in and get his talk on this, but I want to ask him what he's thinking about that, as far as when ghosts stay because the wrong story has been told about them, a lie, or what happened, or how they passed. And that's kind of a large percentage of the earthbound spirit pie. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm not going over there. I'm going to be punished, or this is going to happen, or that's going to be. That's number one. Not want to see ex-wife and your girlfriend in the same place. That seems to be pretty high on the list too. But let's see what Steve has to say about it. So everybody knows Steve, wonderful channels, a friend of mine. So it's always first that he is my buddy, my pal, the one I go to tell stuff that I know it's not going to go anywhere else, and he can do the same to me. And genuinely happy when he's happy, and genuinely sad when he's sad. And it's been a wonderful journey, and my journey has been better since I met this man right here. So let's get him in here. Hey, Steve. Mute, baby. Mute. No, you can. Uh-oh. I got fuzz. If you can, I know you can hear me because you're yeah, but there's like a fuzz, like a what does it sound like? It sounds like, it's not really white noise, it's fuzzy noise. like you're in a light rainstorm, but I don't hear anything from you. It's just static, static, static. Let's go. Let me see. I'm not going to touch anything because we're both touching stuff at the same time. Oh, gosh. Oh,
How's
something.
that?
That's it. Was you not plugged in?
I was plugged into the other interface over here. When I did my live yesterday, I had it on the other computer here. So there we go.
That's
I
why I
was going
kept
to
saying
say,
fuzzy.
with an introduction like that, I wish I had a better act for you tonight.
There you go.
The fuzz is
Well,
on my face
they've all
here.
they've done it all for us. You know, you and I,
Having a
all
bad
we got to
hair
do
day.
is sit back and just marvel at it, because what a time, Steve. You know, you and I have
Yeah, it
gone
is.
back to this time before. You know, 23, we celebrated 23. We did the whole 1893, the whole
Yeah.
Chicago Fair, the first Ferris wheel. We did inventions that were shown at the fair, the dishwasher and different electric things, and probably one of the craziest things, H. Holmes and his murder mansion. I mean, so many things in
Yeah,
Chicago, Steve.
a lot of stuff going on in the Windy City for
Mhm.
a long time.
Yep.
Say
Yep.
hi to some people here.
Go,
Let's
please
see.
do.
Let me scroll back to the chat. A bunch of people in here.
Petita's here.
Ted Branston's here. Jennifer
Oh,
B.
yes. And looky
Grey Wolf,
here.
Paranormal Lindsay.
You keep going, sweetheart. I'm going to show you
Vixen
something.
Dog. Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal Podcast is in the
Yeah,
chat.
yeah, I heard she's a real witch, man.
Vixen Doe, did I say hi?
Bitch never
Dimensional
shuts up.
Horrors, how you doing?
It's crazy. She's a redhead, isn't she? Look at here. Newest gatekeeper, Steve. This is Connor. This is Ted. Yeah, Connor. Connor now owns Ted Branson.
Ted belongs to him, I'm sure.
And
Glad
he's
you got
our
your number
newest
while you
little
go
gatekeeper.
there,
I can just mush his little face. I can
Cathedras
just chew
here.
on his little ear. He's just adorable.
Euphemia Manzer's in the house.
Say that
Salvador
again.
Soto, how you Euphemia Manzer? I hope I'm saying it right.
I'm saying Manzer because I can't
Salvador
even.
Soto, how you doing, brother?
Please don't take offense to that. I can't pronounce a damn thing.
Uncommon Belief 21.
Uncommon. Yep, we've
Sasha
got
Bell.
our gangs
doing,
all here.
Sasha Bell? Good to see you.
Gangs all here. Please share it out. Please give a thumbs up. Please comment in the. And thank you guys so much for everybody that keeps coming back there and commenting and putting. Hey, great show, or great chat. Speaking of Chicago, where's Yoda Girl? I don't know. I haven't seen Yoda Girl. I saw it in the chat the other day. Yeah, there's people come and go, and they, you think, and then all of a sudden, bam, somebody pops in to say hi.
About
Please
your
do.
opening monologue.
Which one?
You uttered the phrase, I took a lot of it in high school. That could be so many different meanings.
Oh my God, did I say that?
You're talking about history, I think, but
oh, okay.
It was not that. It was
all
not
right.
bloody
I'm
context.
starting to get
I took a lot of it in high school. That could go a lot of different. We could go out the road.
That could be a game. That could be a drinking game or a board game or card game. It could be all kinds of things. No, basically, it was classes on organized crime, violence in America, the history of violence in America. They switch it up all over the place, and they compartmentalize these different things. There was a lot of electives.
Serial killers.
Mm-hmm. So I took stuff like that, art and violence.
There you go. It goes together well.
I don't even know. Underwater basket weaving.
Throw a little Wagner in there, and it all just fits.
Mm-hmm. Set it to music. But anyhow, here I am. This is what happened to me. This is what that'll get you, kids. So I don't know whether you want to pick that or not. Maybe take home mech or mechanics or something. But anyhow, yeah. So what we were talking about, I was, and please, Steve, two things to tell you about the link tree. First of all, Cathedra, if you've got Steve's link tree, throw it up here. Second of all, your link tree, unless I'm hitting the wrong one, does not have your radio show, which is called again.
Everything Out There on the Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Radio Network. Yeah, I need to update my link tree.
Thanks, you need to, because that's not there. I was trying to share it out before and I couldn't find it. So there, and the new one, which is Ain't That Some Shit? And you're going to see a lot of that tonight because I'm
Yeah,
here to tell you,
ain't
Steve.
that some shit?
So many times that popped into my head when researching this, and I've been doing this is about
That's why I wanted to call a podcast that.
right after Christmas. I started. I
It's
knew I
kind of a
wanted to
new
do
wave
Ness.
punk rock take on Paul Harvey.
Ain't that some
Well,
shit?
ain't that some
So,
shit?
yep. And then you mentioned Paul Harvey, and we did, If
We
I Were
talked
the
about
Devil
yeah.
last time we were together,
Boy,
and
that
that's
was
just so
spot on. That
poignant.
was from what, 60 something, 67,
65,
65.
65. Yeah. And,
Man ahead of his time.
yep. And then Steve and I got together, did another radio show, which he aptly named, and I loved it. Say it, Steve.
The Paranormalist.
Isn't that wonderful?
And it was
he's like,
supposed to play last night, and the other end that puts it out to the actual radio, they messed up and played episode 15 instead of yours. So I'm hoping yours will play next week. It's up over there now.
throw the link up here if somebody's got it for the radio show. Everything after there it is. Sasha Bell. Hi, Sasha Bell. How you doing,
She's
Chogo?
quick. I think she's a
Vixen.
reincarnated.
Hi, honey. I don't think I
Sasha
said
Bell's
hi
a
to Vixen.
reincarnated gunfighter because she's
There we
quick
go.
on those links.
Yep. It's all this Alec Baldwin stuff just went through my head, and I'm just letting it go.
I had about a 20-minute essay there about a paranormalist, and then Cisco came in and talked all about it. I love that word, a paranormalist.
And everybody says, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know, and nobody else does either. It's
perfect.
Go
listen to the radio show and find out. We still don't know what it means, but it's a good word.
But we were also talking about during that show, something I mentioned in the intro was about ghosts hanging behind. Now, thanks. Oh, Vixen, thank you so much, honey. Super sticker. Yes, we appreciate all your super stickers. I guarantee it all goes towards the show. I have witnesses to that. Because every time my StreamYard comes through, I'm like, thank you so much. Because I
just paid mine today too.
So much. I mean, it hurts at these times. Anytime I sell a book, that's why I'm putting it up front again. Anytime like that stuff, you're putting it out in the universe, and usually your guides or whatever can get that to you right when you need it the most. Like I've had it come in.
Sign some copies of that and get it out there.
Oh, that would be fun. I need to buy more. I have not bought a stack. I owe so many people books, and I have not bought a stack since the first
I've got
bunch.
2 boxes full of 5 different ones of mine here.
Gave them all away.
Signed copies over on my Etsy shop. Now you have an Etsy shop, don't you, for your twisted?
I don't have an Etsy shop. I have a
jewelry.
T-Mobile, T-Public right now with it's got stuff merch for the the podcast. But I didn't do my jewelry. I should again. I did have one, but we had to ship
we
things.
Need to meet up in person, and I'll sign a bunch of
Vixen.
them too, and then that'd be the.
Thanks again, baby. Appreciate it very much.
You get a signed copy of. Yep. We're all children in the wilderness of the afterlife. A guided tour through a haunted life. It took me 2 years to be able to say that.
There you go. There you go. Tongue. Yep, it's there. It's we worked hard on it, but it was fun too. It was really fun too. A lot of fun. Here it is. Here's the cover. If you want to see it, look, you can kind of see it in the background here. Hang on, let me get you. I'm trying to move it. It won't move. You can't look it. Hot Mess Express.
You got it as a background. Try it as an overlay if you've got it in that stack.
Let me see if I've got that. Hold on.
You may have to take us. I think if you put it up as an overlay, it'll cover us up.
It might. Oh, we'll get it later. Yeah, because it's just going in the background for some reason. It's not playing. It's really weird. All right. So anyhow, what I was talking about was earthbound spirits. Like if you looked at it like a pie, and you had put everything that any medium or any person with abilities or my own experiences and other people's experiences that I trust that are close to me, basically gathering that data and saying, if you had a pie and within that pie you had reasons that if you were able to find out why a ghost stayed behind via their free will, I think a large slice of that would be fear of the other side.
It could be probably a Venn diagram too. Some of those circles would overlap, but I believe unfinished business is a lot of it. And it could be just like you said, they want to set the record straight about stuff that's been told about them. That'd be a major unfinished business if they were telling all kinds of things about you.
It's so important.
True.
It's truly is important. And you and I even talked in our interview about different stories and cases that I know of where somebody was just speaking ill of the dead basically and got that spirit attached to them, that earthbound spirit, that earthbound ghost essence, whatever, attached to them, because basically they put like a self curse and or attached that person to them. And that's something that I actually want to really drive home when I do these shows, is because I have people that speak to me and you're like, you might be in a conversation and they might say something like I'm glad that old bastard is dead. I don't have to worry about him anymore. Well, every time you talk about him, you're attaching that person to you. So don't speak of it. Just let it. And you really want to back them off, forgive them. Let it go. Cut the cords. Yep. You don't have to forget. You learn from it. You keep all the good data and you let all the pain and the hurt and everything else go, because chances are you were in a social meeting on the other side and probably agreed to that stuff and already agreed to forgive each other, because again, we get that stuff wrong when we do it, because it's I forget who said it. It's like hating someone and not forgiving them is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die.
Yeah.
You're not going to hurt that person. You're just keeping that person tethered to you. If you understand what I'm saying. So it's similar with speaking ill of, or, cursing their memory and things like that. It really does escalate you and them if you can let that go. The movie The Ravine is all about that. It's very important. So that's why, and Steve and I have talked about this, it's like, if we can get this right while we're living, how much extra help will it be? And how much easier will the passing over and the crossing for you, your loved ones, we talk about this stuff all the time, because why are we trying to learn about this if it's not to help our loved ones and humanity and ourselves?
Indeed.
And to try to sort it, right? So that's why when I dig back at Lizzie Borden and I turn it inside out to the best of my ability, and I'll always correct myself if I get it wrong and I find out later on that I got a fact wrong or something like that, I have no problem putting that out and saying, hey, I was mistaken. In fact, let me correct something from last night. Real
nice
quick.
Segue there.
When I kept saying the 1923 Chicago Fair, and it wasn't, it was 1893. But there's just so many dates. You know what I'm saying?
Didn't we cover 1923 too?
Mm-hmm. And that's why my mind kept melting in between, because we did Lon Chaney. We did Lon Chaney Jr. We did Hunchback of Notre Dame. We did who was the H.P. Lovecraft. All of these things were prominent throughout America, and we even did the globe. I did different things that happened during that time, different wars that broke out, tsunamis and things. Got deep into it because I wanted to immerse everybody in the timeline. It's like, well, you could just say the date 1923. Well, people who sat through that, now, and I look at it and I go, I'm amazed. And the thing that amazes me,
a lot of stuff happened 100 years ago last year.
Well, yeah, 100 years. What was scaring people 100 years ago? Well, Lon Chaney and his makeup case and The Man of 1,000 Faces, and silent movies were coming out, and books. What were they reading? And we found out that they were just as they liked the yellow journalism, and they loved gossip, and they did their seances and Ouija boards.
In the news in 1923.
All of it. They're just like us. They murdered each other, cheated on each other, drank too much, did drugs, fraternized, the whole thing is just like us. Just a different time, to different music, to different dances and different slangs and different laws and things that were allowed. And one of the times that we're talking about tonight is where they passed a law trying to force people not to have bad habits or make their own choices. And that gets really slippery when you start doing that. We talked a little bit about that last night with the whole temperance movement. I totally get where the women were coming from. They had nowhere to turn, because they couldn't get their husbands to come home and bring the money home and feed the kids and pay the rent. It was a problem. And it was mostly the women that were fighting it, because at that time, women did mostly stay home. And, if they worked, they took in laundry and washed. Not that they didn't work. They worked their butts off, and then trying to feed the kids in hard times. You're just coming out of a war, First World War. You're really only a decade and a half away from that. You've got the effects of shell shock. And it was a horrible war. I mean, what war is good? But, the gassing and the trenches and the just horrid.
Yeah, World War I was particularly nasty with the no man's land and the trench warfare and the mustard gas and all that stuff.
And how people were treated when they came back, and the homeless problem, and people trying to find steady work, and the industrial boom, and you had the Gilded Age and the extremely poor, and you started having the Hoovervilles, and just all kinds of stuff like that. And we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to get into that because this whole Eliot Ness's life, of course, spanned. He lived to be 54, 52, 54. And, so you got 5 decades there. Well, he really got into it. You're talking about 3 because he started really digging his teeth into it early 20s. Yeah. So he went from Chicago to Cleveland, and that's why I called it that, because this man is the most incredible story, right? To how he started and where he wound up, and even after death, I found some deep stuff that is just going to blow your mind. That's why I had to split it with like 4, maybe even 5 episodes, because why? Why is it important? Well, I asked a couple of people over the past couple of weeks, if I said Eliot Ness to you, so first thing that pops into your head. Okay. And I asked the chat last night, and I heard a couple of things.
Untouchables. That was he wrote a book about his adventures, and then they made a movie with that. The most memorable one, I think, was the one with Sean Connery.
Yeah. 1987. That one was. That was the
saw that in the theater.
One with Kevin Costner played Ness, and then you had Sean Connery, and then you had a couple other ones, and they had some great scenes in there. But I'll tell you something, if you talk to anybody,
watch that movie. Everybody remembers that scene.
Oh, it's very well done. And Al Pacino plays not Al Pacino. Right now I can see him. Total blank. I'm looking right at him, the son of a bitch. Robert De Niro, thank you. Yeah. He plays Al Capone, and not my favorite Al Capone. Just gotta say, he's not my favorite actor anymore either. But I have my reasons. But so 1987, that was the movie, and how far from the truth do you believe, from the real Eliot Ness and the things that happened, do you believe the 1987 movie would be? So that's pretty far. He died in 57. Al Capone went to jail. 31. You got the St Valentines Day massacre, 29. You think about this. This is like crazy amount of stuff, right? So anyhow, just to get back and get started here, Eliot Ness, why is it important to dig into Lizzie Borden and Eliot Ness and, Captain McDonald and all of these murder cases and true crime? Because I want the truth. Because again, if you can't get the truth in paranormal investigation, in the supernatural, whatever you're doing, what are we doing? Bigfoot investigations. Stop arguing about my Bigfoot did this, my ghost did that, and my UFO did that. Just tell us. And everybody put that in your data, and let's learn from it, because again, it's all connected. It's all connected. And the reason I think it's important to find the true facts and sort the facts from fiction in Eliot Ness is because this is one of the kind of people that we keep saying we need. And what did we do to him? Through time, you got to understand that when he was in Cleveland, I mean, it's kind of like he kept shooting for things at the wrong time, like running for mayor. And that time it kind of wore off. People weren't really grateful for the things he did, and they weren't advertised the way that they should have been. For what he did to Cleveland was amazing. There's an amazing woman I found a couple of days ago who goes around. She's a lifelong Cleveland resident. And this woman goes around and gives documentary libraries and colleges and things like that to tell the life of Eliot Ness, because she feels the same as I do, that Cleveland doesn't remember the things he did that's still going on in Cleveland now and changed many things afterwards, kind of set the cookie cutter for different extremely important things, public safety, because that's what he was on in Cleveland. That's where he started. And then, the only thing that we think about Cleveland is he ran into a serial killer that you hear got the best of him. And if you're talking about Eliot Ness in Chicago, you think, oh, he's the guy that took down Capone. Well, not all by himself.
Yeah.
But he got kind of gypped, and he the amazing things that did go on, and that went as far as Eliot Ness really hands-on, that he constructed and instructed and set up is absolutely amazing. We don't remember that stuff. We just remember, okay, well, he was the guy who took down Al Capone, and you'll hear how that happened and how that little fact got stuck in our head, but it's really not the whole story. And the things that are hidden are even more wild, and the things you would think aren't true really are, and the things that we think are true aren't. It's just one of those things, Steve. Yeah. It's incredible. And what a time. So if it's cool with you, do you want to get started?
Yeah. Roll that. All right. Vein footage.
So last night we recapped. I did a video on Chicago, and we recapped for that. So if you're here tonight and didn't see that one, go back and find the video and watch that, because it's really cool. It tells about the basically the structure of the organized crime. And of course, common sense, you take one out and one moves up, you take one out, and maybe a whole gang gets shifted, it breaks up and makes maybe another gang splits off, kind of like a series where you get like spin-offs. So they just keep taking each other out and fighting, east against west and south against the north side and all that kind of stuff. So that makes perfect sense. But you'll get the names. You'll get the, Diamond Jim Colosimo. Well, he dies. He gets shot in his restaurant. He didn't go put on an opera record and stand there and do like you see in the movies. He walked in the door. The guy was hiding, killed him dead. And that's where he was found. And many of these guys were found that way, or in the street, or laying on the sidewalk. It's not a glamorous thing how did we ever glamorize it? I don't know. Like with the Sopranos and the Goodfellas and the whole, I guess it's just like anything else, cowboys and Indians, whatever, it's war. It's interesting and exciting. And it's just, it's not far removed, Steve, from the they really call them like the dime store novels, the little paper things that the cowboys used to carry around, like the old stories you hear where Billy the Kid, actually was like reading about himself in these little dime store novels. And you know what I mean? And it's just that, it inspires kids. I want to go and be a cowboy. I want to go and join the circus. I want to be a gunslinger. I want to be a bank robber. I want to be, drive a fancy car. I mean, that's kind of what inspired that, and culture and his atmosphere. Bonnie and Clyde, little Clyde, he read about it. He said, I'm just going to be one like they are. I'm going to be the baddest one. How many people? So when you're in Chicago is on fire. Al Capone has definitely moved to the top. He is he's a mess. That's what he is. He's pretty much taken over Chicago. The extortion, the prostitution, the gambling, and prohibition gets put in, and it makes every bootlegger out there rich, because they just like money, 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 money. So here we have a young man, Eliot Ness. Now, he was born, I said this last night, but I'm going to go over it again real quick just to get a basis on him. Eliot Ness was born in Chicago in 1903 to a Norwegian immigrant, Peter Ness, a baker who owned his own bakery, and Emma King Ness, the daughter of a British engineer and Norwegian dressmaker. As a youth, he worked at his father's bakery and kept a paper route at the same time, demonstrating that he definitely wasn't afraid of a little hard work. Now, the backstory on that, and I'm talking quick because I want to get a little bit in here. His father was never at home. And it wasn't because he was an alcoholic or a drinker or anything like that. I haven't been able to find anything like that. He was a hardworking man. He was, as you see, living in Chicago, busy, busy, busy. He's a baker. So you're going in at what, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to bake the bread. They didn't get it frozen and just heat it up. They made it. And he was, he'd close it at the end of the night, set up for the next day, go home. And he had nothing to worry about at his home because his wife was home raising his 5 children. And he was providing for them. And just like everybody that was a good dad and a good parent back in this day, the proper thing was to work hard and save money for college and put a kid in college, right? He had 4 daughters. Well, when he got a son, he knew he was going to have to pay for him to go to college, and he worked so hard, he hardly spent any time with him other than being at the bakery. But he instilled in him the hard work ethic, organization, the importance of an education, and the importance on being a good parent. The unfortunate thing was Eliot Ness was married 3 times, never able to have children. He adopted one with the lady you see sitting here in the car. This is his 3rd wife. All of his wives were really cool. It was just, he married a couple artists. This one here was into sculpting and pottery. Another one was an illustrator for children's books, very talented. But he was like his dad. He did the whole cats in the cradle thing, it's like my boy was just like me because he's hardworking, very organized, very big on his education. He loved, he read Shakespeare as a child. He read Sherlock Holmes, which got him into detective and deduction and crime, interest in solving crimes and mysteries. So Eliot was pretty cool, and you could see in his character as he goes through that inspiration of not only a father who showed him hard work and a good work ethic, and being honest and honor your word is your bond, follow the law. Hey, Froze, welcome in. But also from his mother, he got this kindness and a fondness for his sisters, who I think the youngest, we have a little in common with him, Steve, because he was a late in life baby, and all his siblings were teenagers by the time he was born.
Yeah.
And they were all girls. And they taught him to dance. He was an accomplished ballroom dancer because he had 4 sisters and good music. He loved good music, and he would take, he was 5'9". He was very charismatic, but he wasn't like this beefcake built guy. But he could speak well to your face, but he was a terrible orator. So that's why they think that was like the number one reason he lost the mayor race late in life when he ran in Cleveland, because he could speak to you. Hey, Yoda girl, welcome in. He could speak to you, but
Joanne.
He was bad at, giving speeches. He was better at just getting things done. Early, late to bed. He would never get home earlier than 9, 10 o'clock at night in any of the offices he ever worked in. He would leave early, long commutes on some of them, but he was really devoted to being honorable. Yet there was a couple things he'd color outside of lines with, like he's kicking down doors of bootleggers and taking the liquor, the illegal liquor, but he's taking a couple bottles for his friends because this guy had a glass of scotch every day he was kicking down a door. He did die. Way too much alcohol. You could say alcoholic. They think that you could see in his face here the difference, not just age, but this is his young little age. He was about 30 here. And over here, this is when he was running for mayor. And you could see the alcoholism in the nose and things like that. Of course, age too. But again, he wasn't a sloppy drunk, and he wasn't, later on, he was more like sitting at the bar. Well, here we go. I, missed this one, and, this one got away, and he, regrets, but he perked up toward the end. And I want to focus on that one, by the time we're done with these episodes, because it's really cool that at the end there, he wrote his memoirs, as Steve mentioned, and he didn't get to see it published, but he got to see the final proof.
Yeah.
But there toward the end, he compromised just a tad, where he allowed the writer who took his facts and added a little embellishment and a little zing put a little zing in the zang there.
Yeah.
And he didn't like it. and he didn't like it. But at one point, he was sitting with his friend the last time his good friend saw him, and I heard an interview he did, and he said, well, sometimes you need to add a little excitement to these things, for the public. And he kind of saluted the public and took down his drink, and kind of that was all he wanted to say. He said, I'm glad it's getting written. And he was dead like 5 days later. The book, he never got to see the book come to fruition and do all the things it's done since. But I think if you asked that man that was sitting at the bar that night how he would want to be remembered, I think the man that kept scrapbooks and kept articles and laughed at the cartoons written about him and had a good jovial attitude about it. He says, as long as you're telling the truth, I'm fine with it. Somebody that, he cheated on his wife. Yep, you got that too. So when they say an honorable man, you see what I mean? But you got to take the warts with everything else, because everything else.
And that's where they got the Untouchables at. He considered his whole crew there as incorruptible. And Capone, some of Capone's men offered him and his men like $2,000 a week in perpetuity. And that would be like, I saw the figures, like 30 something grand a week these days.
A week. And he turned it down. In fact, what Eliot Ness did, and what Eliot Ness did mostly, was wanted to get it out of the press. And that was one of the things he learned early on. He would, go to try to bust a bootleg place, where a still or something like that. He would call the press because he wanted it in the press. He wanted them to know he was on them. He wanted it to be front and center because they were front and center and they had to get in front of that train. And I agree. I mean, it's great, but there's a delicate way to do it because the press was tipping off they were getting away. You know what I mean?
$2,000 a week.
Mm-hmm. They were getting away. So, taking it like that and looking at it this way, you understand why I'm digging so deep. But I'm also, when you look at these people, we kind of can't help but see ourselves in a way too. He when he talked, he would kind of flick his fingers. I mean, I did that a lot, and it's different things that you do. Like when you're trying to listen to somebody, some people draw, which Steve and I have talked about that. It's different things that we do subconsciously to focus or whatever it may be. You can see all those little things in him too. But the most number one important thing about him is he didn't keep scrapbooks because he was narcissistic about himself. He said, I want to keep all these articles and everything because I know how people change things. And this should be documented. Somebody's going to want to know this, what happened first. And, why did Ness pick these guys? And, not everybody, I love the way he chose people for their talents. He was one of the first people that did that. Listen, at that time, it wasn't the Federal Bureau of Investigation yet. It was just the Bureau of Investigation. And they were all over the place. It was a chaotic mess. Nobody knew what was going on. There was no communication. Eliot wanted this group to report to him and only him. And he picked each one for, different things. Like one was a really good driver. One was an ex-Marine and a wrestler. And he was the one that was going to teach him, all this hand stuff and how to protect themselves. He had people in there. He wanted them to be physical and training. Nobody had ever heard of that. Nobody ever heard of that. You weren't going to police academy, to learn all these different things. Eliot Ness started that with the Untouchables, and he never called them the Untouchables. That was the press.
Yeah.
But he was fine with it. He was like, okay, great. Because at least they're putting that forward. There was, in all honesty, one guy who did get corrupted. He got touched and they didn't make a big deal out of it. They just relocated him and took him out of the group and relocated him away. And that was it. They just shunned him out. And, because they didn't want that to be, a big thing. So it was really important. So Al Capone is pretty much the king of Chicago at this point. And I mean, by literally, he was making up in today's money, the billions. He was making like $103 million a year, 103 million. And it was just so awash with corruption and so much extortion and so much payouts. And yes, he did start a soup kitchen, But listen, he fed kids and he fed homeless, but he extorted the food from the shops and so again, what do you do
Well, it's
with that?
kind
I
of
mean,
like a modern day Robin Hood at that time. He took from the rich and gave to the poor, but he didn't mind shaking down those places.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not good no matter how you look at it. But if you're a guy I hadn't eaten in 3 days and you get a hot bowl of soup, I could see why you would, your vantage point would change. And so did Al. He knew that too. So everything started to break loose. Eliot Ness is now on the Prohibition Board, and it's like I said, it's very loosey goosey over there. There's not a lot of structure. One of his sisters has married a real G-man, which is what they're starting to get called now, even though it's not the Federal Bureau yet. Hoover is just starting to get control of that. And he kind of looks to him as like, can you give me some pointers? Can you give me? He never really gets to open doors for him. He tried later on, and I'll tell you what happens there. But in the beginning, it wasn't like he was leaning on the brother. It was just tips and, tell me what push-ups, how far should I run? What do I need to know? What should I be training in or whatever. He took a lot of criminology classes, got a business degree. And it's just the way he got in there, just the right time. And something happened that just absolutely threw Chicago. You could see the skid marks where all the people just went, because at that time you did have what Steve and I were saying, the guys at the soup kitchens that were getting fed. You did have, somebody was sticking it to the man that it stuck it to them. So you did have that Robin Hood kind of vantage point from people. He would go and buy an apple from somebody, give him $100. Again, this you're buying the public view, point of view. But something happened that absolutely blew that out of the water. And that's when they said no more. And that was the St. Valentines Day massacre. And that really did change everything. And if you don't believe it did, St. Valentine's Day massacre happened, of course, February 14th, 1929. And the first day of the trial for Al Capone was October 6, 1931. Less than 2 years later, Al Capone's sitting in a courtroom with serious charges on it. And if the court case hadn't held for Al Capone on tax evasion with the accountants, then Eliot Ness was right behind it with all that he had and the evidence that he had. But it was two separate trials. That blows my mind because they wanted one or the other. And they wanted to be able to hit him with a harder one if they had to, if they couldn't get him on this one. So that's why Al Capone was sitting there for tax evasion and went through the numbers to get him instead of the murders and the bootlegging and the prostitution and the crime. To look at it that way, it kind of seems funny, He should be, going away life for murder, but it was hard to pin on him.
I think they finally got him for three counts of tax evasion. Everything they had on the man, that was what they put him away with.
Is that not incredible or what?
And
so
he had on his paperwork, he was listed as a furniture salesman, I think, a furniture dealer.
Yep. So here's a little tidbit about, now this has got some spoilers in it. The only way I could do this was kind of, like I said, take you from Chicago to Cleveland. But we did last night go from Chicago to the end of his life, the beginning, again and back again, because there's poignant things in there that match up and kind of brings you back to the middle. Then we kind of fill it in again. So this one is going to give you some spoilers. But again, we kind of know, so we got to get it all in there anyway. This is a wonderful, I've listened to some great interviews with this guy. I wish I could remember his doggone name, but they're real long. It's like, you'll see it here in a minute. But they wrote a great book, and the thing is boy, I'll tell you what, you can get some good books when things start coming out, like journals that people let go after, when they show up in a museum or a thrift store and somebody finds it, or some other kind of thing, scrapbooks or letters. A bunch of stuff came out on Eliot Ness. And some found items and things like that. So we were able to get some answers to some things. And then again, you got the whole crew in Cleveland, this wonderful woman. I'll tell you her name here in a minute. She wasn't going to stop till the real story got out. And I just applaud her for it. In fact, I told you guys I couldn't find anything on the son. I found something. I found out what happened to the young man. So we'll get that in there too. But this one is just fabulous. I think you're going to like it. It's about 10 minutes. Steve, if Mulder needs to go out, this is a good one for it.
All right.
I think it's.
Just want to say hey to Ghost Lore, and I sub over there, and sub to Ghost Lore.
Hey, Ghost Lore, how you doing? So here we go. Let's see what we got. We're looking for him.
As Ness. Box office numbers proved it was a success, but as a reflection of historic accuracy, it fell far short. Max Allan Collins is no stranger to the rules of Hollywood. He wrote the 2002 Chicago mob story Road to Perdition and is the author of the Dick Tracy comic strip. Why did it offend you so much, the inaccuracies of the Capone movie from '87?
Got to stop in a second to throw this in. There, I have a picture you'll see later on of the man who created the Dick Tracy comic book strip. And that happened during Eliot Ness's life. Eliot Ness knew very well Dick Tracy was him. And he knew very well that, you remember the name of the bad guy in there? Was it Fat Boy or Big Guy or?
Oh, when Dick Tracy, there was a bunch of them.
Oh, the main guy, that was Capone. And they would put it out, he would put it out and he would cut those comics out and put them in the scrapbook. And he thought it was just great because it was promoting following the law and crime didn't pay. And he was all for it.
Prune face, flat top, the brow, mumbles, shoulders, the blank, BBI, Big Boy Caprice. I think that
there it is. That was Al Capone. Yep. Yeah. How about that? And that was he got to see that. That was in his lifetime. He liked that a lot.
Yeah.
What irritates me is the sloppiness of the way the history was portrayed. I'm fine with history being tweaked and compressed and so on, but you don't throw Frank Nitti off a building when you're Eliot Ness, who was a very straight shooter. And you certainly don't change juries in the middle of a trial.
To switch the juries.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, I object.
The actual things that happened were of more interest and were often more bizarre.
Collins is an experienced writer. A. Brad Schwartz is a historian from Princeton. They sifted through newly released federal files where they found this: photos of the Untouchables. The authors talked to the relatives of the Untouchables and re-examined evidence. But let's start with the two men at the center of the story.
This is so good. These little news shows.
Pop culture often embraces Scarface as just a fun-loving charitable bootlegger who ran soup kitchens for the poor.
The way the soup kitchen was maintained was
Yep, WGN Channel 9 Chicago News.
Capone sending his enforcers around to get free food from grocers. So the idea that this was out of his largesse is grossly exaggerated. I think what made Capone famous and infamous was a really savvy notion of how to do PR and a very basic notion of wanting to be liked. This is one of the things that just kind of jumped out at us.
In the early days, he may have indeed been viewed as just a fun-loving bootlegger, but then, February 14th, 1929, the Valentine's Day Massacre as depicted in this 1967 film. 7 men connected to Chicago's North Side gang were gunned down in a garage on 2122 North Clark Street. Schwartz visited the brick wall from that garage, which was reassembled for the Mob Museum in Las Vegas.
You can still see the bullet marks. For many years, it was in the men's room of a Roaring Twenties themed nightclub, where the urinals were. But fortunately, now it's in a protected museum environment. So I held the bullets that were taken out of the men in my hands, and I also went to the sheriff's department that confiscated the guns that we know were used in the crime, and I held them. And it's remarkable how that connects you to these sorts of events that have become legendary.
Schwartz visited the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to shoot one.
When you're actually holding the gun that was used, or when you're actually seeing the wall, it takes you right back to that moment.
And while tax evasion is what brought Capone down, Ness's Untouchables set the stage for his downfall. A series of raids at breweries cut off funds for Capone when he needed them the most.
Ness and his Untouchables paraded all of the trucks that they had confiscated, the beer trucks from Al Capone, past Capone's headquarters in the Lexington Hotel. And Ness, in one of the only times they ever had direct contact, calls Capone up and says, "Look out your window at 11 a.m. and you'll see something interesting." And then Capone flies off the handle, as he was prone to do, and threatens to have Ness killed. I was sure, I would have guaranteed you that that was fictitious, because people had denied that it could have happened, that Ness was not having anything to do with Al Capone. So why would that be true? But we were able to find numerous sources. All of the remarkable things, the wiretaps, the parade of trucks, the almost getting knifed when he was undercover in a saloon in Chicago Heights.
So true.
It all happened.
What's the matter? You afraid to come out from behind your men? You afraid to stand up for yourself?
They met frequently in fiction, but historians doubted they ever met in real life. This photo
there he is.
Wrong.
Ness escorted Capone to Dearborn Station and put him on the train to send him to prison in Atlanta. This notion that they never met, which some historians have put out there, that's false.
It seemed to me that Capone had really bad legal advice and legal representation.
Capone had almost suspiciously bad legal advice. There's really good evidence that the federal people basically, shall we say, colluded with people in the mob to put Capone away and make it seem like crime was no longer a problem in Chicago.
Weren't they concerned that somebody would just fill that void and replace him?
Yes, someone would obviously fill that void, but that someone would not be wearing a pearl hat, smoking a cigar, with scars on his face, and throwing the first ball out at the baseball game. They wanted that kind of PR off. They wanted a different face on the city of Chicago. Both the government and also the outfit itself, who preferred to do their business in a more quiet way.
Ness and Capone, opposite sides of the law, but both revolutionized their respective professions.
The fact that this is a fundamentally American story, it's a fundamentally Chicago story, that even though so many of the buildings are gone, the St. Valentines Day Massacre garage has been torn down, the Lexington Hotel, even though the physical reminders in many cases are gone, Capone and Ness are still baked into the architecture of this city.
Did you know Al Capone and Eliot Ness actually lived on the same street? Many Chicagoans know Capone lived at 7244 Prairie. Ness's home was 5 miles south at 108th and Prairie in a very similar brick two-flat. You probably don't know the name Frank Wilson, but he's the unsung hero of this case. In 1930, the tax investigator went through the books and said it added up to just about nothing. He was getting ready to file it all away, but the filing cabinet was locked. When he looked for the key, he found an unlocked cabinet in a nearby storeroom and found a ledger that seemed to document gambling profits. It contained a simple notation: Frank paid $17,500 for Al. Wilson knew he finally had his case. But Hollywood producers don't make movies about accountants, or do they?
Now, this is the movie. There you go. Let me get past there so I don't get a copy. So right here, and let me know how you like it. I can't vouch for the facts on the movie. I have not watched it and I haven't researched it yet. But what the man said is true. he was just about to give up. And he found an unlocked cabinet. He was looking for a key to lock up literally closed it up, was putting it up, and he was going to go talk to his superior and say, I can't find anything that connects Al Capone. I mean, he's got all this money going out. He's got, from dry cleaning to rent to cars to payouts and, employees and servants and this and that and everything else. He says, but I can't find an income. And that was one of Al's big things. He didn't, he wasn't like Tony Soprano, who's in the waste, management business. He didn't have enough fronts to show for the money. And that's why it is so important to understand, looking at the money and seeing where it came from and how it goes out and how is it connected to Al. Al covered his self really good. CYA was Al Capone #1. But at the same time, you got Eliot Ness now kicking in. He's been there since 27. He knows the ropes. He's in prohibition. He's in, he's got his hands in this. They're just not organized yet. He hasn't been put in any kind of control. And that's the worst part, because he's surrounded by corruption. Everybody's on the take. Al Capone really, literally owned Chicago. He was paying for everybody. And the money was just flowing. But at the same time, when he's put in control, Eliot Ness goes in and starts chipping away. He's trying to get the stills. And he's like, every time we get there, they're going out the back door. They got tunnels. They got secret rooms. They got secret hideouts. They got false floors, false walls. They've got levers they pull. The bottles go down and bust. There's no, and everybody's gone and fleeing out the back or down and out through the cellar or whatever. He learned in the beginning, like I said, to treat a little bit easy, more carefully. He's got to get a little bit more organized on this whole press thing, and the press showing up and blowing it for everybody. And then they bust through a few things through front doors, and they might find a little of this, little of that, but nobody's getting busted, like I said, or they're not finding the big stuff. So he decides what they're going to do is they're going to follow the barrels, because they reuse these barrels, right? So they hit a couple places, do a couple raids, and then they go, okay, we're going to follow the barrels. So they follow the barrels, and everything is all covert, and they're just getting started. He's just getting the Untouchables, they're feeling everything out. First couple of things are going on, and they follow the barrels, and they're all excited. And they get there, and they followed the barrels to where they wash the barrels, not where they're reloading them with whiskey, because these were well organized and clean, organized crime guys. So they had a whole separate place to wash the barrels. They're like, so now they got to stake out again. But that was it. It was just, staying with it. One of the first or second ones, I think somebody came up with the idea to put almost like a battering ram made out of like a snowplow type thing. It would basically look like that. I tried to get you a picture of it, but I couldn't find one. It might be in here somewhere. But made like the front of a train, like you would push snow with the front of a train and put it on the car and bash through. And Eliot Ness shows up, and he's got he was kind of a sports guy, and he had the old leather football helmets, with the chin strap. And he's got this on because, look, their plan is they're going to sit in this car for seat belts, for all this, safety gear. And he's got this football helmet on, and he's just got his fingers crossed, and he's just letting his driver go. And they're going to plow through this door. And he doesn't know what's on the other side, and he's just hoping, against hope it's all going to work. Now he plows through and everybody's fine and it works. But what they found was, not as much as he had hoped for. But he knew it was all going to add up. And he kept plucking away. And as you heard, he was getting to be a cheeky monkey. Again, this is a year and a half before he's got Al in court. Right? This whole group, tax guys included, accountants included. So he keeps chipping away, and they keep confiscating these goods, and they keep now everybody is a little bit more hesitant to take bribes from, because they know Eliot Ness and the Untouchables and everything else are getting a lot of press. The press is who names them the Untouchables, because nobody's going to take a bribe. That big thing comes out with the $2,000 that Steve mentioned. And the first thing Eliot Ness did was call the press and tell everybody. Went out and did a little stand and told everybody about it. Like, oh, you can't be bought, you know. Some things really bad, you know, happened. They did lose one of the Untouchables. It was the driver. His name was Belize. And he was actually, he was a little bit of a criminal himself. And I haven't been able to find out too much of what he was into, but he was one of these, you know, bopping around low level kind of criminal dudes. But Eliot took a liking to him, and he'd known him for a while. And the guy really wanted to flip his life around, and Eliot believed in him, and he had his eye on him, and the guy did him right. You know, he was loyal to Eliot Ness, to the point of they found him dead, tortured to death, with his tongue pulled out of his mouth. And as far as anybody's been able to say, whatever they were looking for, they didn't get it out of him. So there's another one where you go, where are the honorable people? You know, where are the ones that, you know, can be change their life and turn around and given a chance, you know, pulled themselves out, was fighting crime, you know. And Eliot, after that, really turned the screws a little bit tighter, you know, and understandably so. But that's the only one I know of that was killed, and he knew it was a Capone gang. They did threaten him, like you heard the guys say, that they did threaten him and you know, put a hit out here and there. But there was this overlying thing where they really felt an organized crime. No, it's no good payoff to kill a Fed. So they all felt pretty safe, because if you killed a Fed, you know, which is now coming to fruition, the federalized everything, that they would never come up off. They'd turn it up to, you know, 11. So you had a lot of that going back and forth. But Steve, did you want to say anything? This is what the cover of the book. Turn it down.
Yeah.
That's the cover of the book.
Amazing story, and,
right?
Yeah, it is embellished a little bit, but there's enough of the real story there that's captivating.
Yep, that one didn't happen either, but it's cool. This one did.
Yeah.
The craziest stuff. There's Eliot. It's hard to find music for this time, guys, but I'll tell you what, that one was about perfect. Yeah. Okay, so I got to share this. Steve, you're going to love this story. So it's 1960, whatever. I think it was 60. My mama is still married to her first husband. She's married twice. My sisters, my two sisters, their dad. And they're in Florida, and it's a hurricane. And back in the 60s, these wild people love to throw parties for everything. You know, like I said, just like us. And it was popular to throw a hurricane party, Steve. Yep. Okay. So you figure 1960s, it's like Cape Coral, you know. My mom is out there, you know, and they're throwing a party, and, you know, I imagine it was, you know, steamed clams and probably the best martinis in town. They're probably having a ball dancing. You know, this is what everybody did. This guy, I remember my mom always told me this story. Every time this guy popped up in a movie, this guy showed up because there was some stars out there, and they were, you know, house hopping, and they showed up at the big parties at my mom's house, right? My mom's in the kitchen, I don't know, making whiskey sour or something, you know, getting those horse divers, hors d'oeuvres. I know it's hors d'oeuvres. So anyway, he's at the party, and this cheeky monkey has had a couple of the martinis, follows my mom into the kitchen, tries to corner my mom up against the counter, in the kitchen counter, and tried to kiss her. And my mom knocked him in the next Tuesday. She gave him the Barbara Stanwyck slap, and it was so loud they heard it in the room, outside swinging doors at the kitchen, and people came in and he was still like this and tried to hit a big old mark on us. Everybody knew what happened. So I just had to stop and tell you.
He done effed around and found out.
He did. That's him right there, the booger. There you go, Mom. Got one of those.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it worked. And he didn't try anything else. And I think by the time her husband, his name was Porter, walked in, he already knew it had been handled and turned right out the kitchen. But yeah, I like that every time. So there you go. Interesting stuff, man. And the wildest stuff is the true stuff. But why they need to, change it up. Now, I can explain what happened with the book. Again, we had the ghostwriter. And well, he wasn't so much of a ghost right there on the cover, but and Eliot, kind of bargain with Eliot, and Eliot was reluctant, but he approved the last pages. He did get to do that before he passed. And then the book came out, and like these guys said, a lot of it's true. And something else I came across over the past couple of weeks that kind of shows that it's true. It even adds more validation to it, because there's a guy, a museum that got a hold of, I can't remember if it's the one in Cleveland. I think it's a museum in Cleveland, because there's several Eliot Ness museums that got a hold of his scrapbooks. And this man kept every clip, every newspaper article, every magazine thing, every, that had to do with any of the cases. And as we said, Steve, Al Capone isn't even really the biggest case, depending on how you look at it. I think it's even Stephen Bookends, right? Because the torso murders in Cleveland was horrific beyond.
There's a really good recent book about that by, I think the author's last name is Stashauer, called American Demon, that really, really digs into that case. That is excellent.
Yes, I just listened to his interview. Absolutely wonderful. And I found some wonderful documentaries coming out of the UK that are just splendid as well. And I find it very interesting because they seem to have a lot more, sometimes different film footage and, things like that you don't really see, or pictures that we don't see, and it's great to be able to delve into that vault of knowledge.
Companies that made those shorts that they ran in the theaters and stuff, they had their own crews that they would send over. So it's not the footage that everybody saw here in the States.
Right. Oh, yeah. So the TV show now, I cannot remember if it was a movie or they came right out of the box with the TV show. I think it was right out of the box with the TV show with Robert Stack, okay? Yep. Well, the first couple of episodes, look, you tell it like it was or what was in the book. Well, after Al Capone, the truth of this is once Al Capone goes to jail, okay, it's kind of womp, 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 for Eliot Ness, because he doesn't get to do his case. Everybody's lying and saying he wasn't even there. Bullshit. I got several pictures and footage, film footage, okay, that, many historians have said they never met. Well, they spoke on the phone because that happened. He paraded those vehicles past.
There's pictures of them together, so there you go.
Yes, past to Lexington, and now these other pictures come out to prove everybody wrong, where, maybe legitimately so, they thought that they had never met. Well, they did, but not so like they did in the movies that have been since, right?
And that TV show with Robert Stack, that came out in, I believe, 59, ran, I believe, 59 to 63.
Several seasons.
And that was just a couple of years after.
Well, they ran out of stories.
Away. He died in 57, I think.
Right. But again, like how can you're doing 5 seasons of something where the poor guy got in there in 27 in the Prohibition agency. And then the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, 2 years later, they come and get him and put him in charge of his own little thing. Pick your own dudes, get the guy, does so, kicks absolute butt, hurt Al Capone.
Back then,
financially.
Stop. And then later on, you had shows like MASH.
Yeah.
A TV show about the Korean War that ran more seasons than the Korean War lasted. Yeah. So
it's a wild point. It's a wild point, right?
Stories there.
Yeah. Yeah. But so you're talking about, 2 years on that before, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So that's 2 years there. You can't really make shows about that. It was all about Capone and fighting Capone. So he's in there, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, about a year and 9 months, something like that. Al Capone sitting in court on tax evasion. And they do have a pretty solid case on him getting him, throwing in the extra. Why they didn't combine it, I haven't been able to sort that yet. But again, like I said, that's how it happened. And then what happens? Al Capone's in the, in the can, right? And then what happens? Prohibition, it ends. So his job's liquidated out from under him. That's the truth. That's a very short time. If you think about it, in the lifelong career, multiple careers that Eliot Ness had, right? Kind of all sort of the same, but some of it sounds crazy, like in charge of the safety division. It blows your mind that that's how he got what he was in Cleveland, but what he was into and what that entailed and what that included.
He wasn't able to taunt the people in the press like he had done with Capone. But that kind of boomeranged on him. One of the prime suspects was a physician. I think he was a surgeon. And he often he would lampoon and make fun of Ness in the press and turned it back around on him. So it wasn't as much fun when he was the one being poked fun of for not being able to solve that crime. Right.
Oh yeah. But there's more. It's gonna be ain't that some shit. There's more to the story. There's more to the story, but that'll be next weekend, folks, because it's just he might have only been 5'9" and a fantastic ballroom dancer, and whatever he was, right? But he's got a hell of a story. There's no way I could fit it in one weekend and give you all the details to just maybe sit back and go, what? And one of them was the Al Capone. I had heard this. And, it was kicked around when I was taking these classes in high school, because, again, I'm going by 1970 textbooks, which are probably from 1950. You know what I mean? Nice. So, think about it. So, we're basing on that. And I'm surprised I even found out about the garlic on the bullets and was teaching everybody, I was telling them last night, I taught my teacher something about, all these little things like, everybody'd have these little idiosyncrasies, these eccentric killers and shit. The Italians would sit around in this group, Al Capone's group, put garlic on the bullets because they thought it would cause them to die a hard death, and it would poison them and send them, to the grave screaming and stuff like that. They would say in Italian. It sounds better in Italian. Yeah. But anyway, they would say all this stuff. And I'm sitting there laughing because even back then I knew garlic healed. Garlic is an antibiotic, so actually you're helping to heal the wound. It was just such an irony. And I was and the first time I had my teacher sitting there going like, just listening. It was a cool moment, in history class, teenager, and the other classes, I used to climb out the window and play hooky and stuff, but that's another story. So story for another time. So it's amazing to me how Untouchables got that amount of series, and people would still go, but it's true. They did incorporate some other stories with other gangsters. And, again, that was a time when the big, show came out not far from that, Steve. It was the FBI. Remember that? The FBI in color. Yeah. Remember that?
Yep.
So, and they were trying to keep it. Hoover was all over that, don't you think? He was all about reputation. In fact, here's a little end of the story kind of thing. When Eliot Ness got out, he's leaving Chicago because, again, prohibition's done. Where am I going? He leans on the brother-in-law again, the one that is a real G-man, and now it is called the FBI because that happens. This is on the cusp of the birth of criminology, folks. This is when they're doing little things, in these little beige offices and cubicles and stuff where they're testing, shooting gun into cotton, and they're sorting things out and learning about striations on bullets, looking into fingerprints and voice analysis and teeth mark, bite mark comparisons and stuff like that. They're really getting into all of it, and it's amazing to watch. It's a great story if you go in the FBI and you go into that round. If you go in through the Hoover end, you're going to wind up hearing about a very distorted looking man prancing around in a dress, best friends and neighbors like this with LBJ, and the stuff that used to go on the Oval Office with them will curl your hair. I promise you. And we will get to that story one day. But depending on how you go into the FBI, this this is the more interesting.
Yeah.
This
More
is the more
interesting
interesting
rabbit hole.
door. It's more interesting door. So it's just amazing how much they got out of a short amount of time. The actual story really was. But amazing tidbit. He's leaving, and he says, "Well, I'll go in the FBI. I'll talk to my brother-in-law. Can you get me in?" I saw the letters, folks, that this guy wrote to Hoover. Now, if you understood Hoover's persona, how he didn't like to be outshined by anyone, he didn't want anybody else's name associated with the FBI beyond his, and he felt like Eliot Ness had a little too much press on him.
Yeah.
And a little bit too much shine.
They would say it that way. J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, he mandated that.
This little bastard kept putting the letters in his desk.
You had to have Hoover's name before it.
That's true. And he kept taking these letters and stuffing them in the desk and just not pushing it through to the next thing, kind of ignoring it. It'll go away. And he did. And that's how Eliot Ness wound up the next stop, wound up in Cleveland, and eventually wound up in Pennsylvania. But that's another story. So what happened that got Eliot Ness fired up? Okay. How's our time? Our time's good. Okay. Fired up and put in charge and got everybody around, like, whatever you need, Eliot, tell us what you need. This was his heyday. He was on. And it's still learning, but he was good. I like this guy. You know what I mean? I really do. And he meant what he said, and he said what he meant. And he really got a lot done. I mean, this is a guy who gets up early and goes to bed late, and he's constant work, but still had time for the neighbors' kids and to play ball with them. Different stuff like that. And like I said, ballroom dancing, but not much. When he was working, he was working. So this is what happened. Al Capone needs to take out Bugs Moran. Okay. And that's it. He's going to take him out. He's got that whole side. And he's in like Flint. He really is the king. He's got everything. Okay. So Al Capone has an MO. He has a way about him. People know how he kills. Even if he's not the one pulling the trigger, he knows who to get and who's going to clean, who's going to do it swift and clean and get it done. And in some cases, then he had them killed. And it's not unheard of. A lot of this went on. And I'm telling you, you're coming up to the kind of a bloody part. So if you need to go make a sandwich, I understand. No explanation needed. Hey, Jack, welcome in. So you have to think of this again. That's why I show the videos and the times and the music and the gambling, and it was just absolute craziness to have a family and try to go to work and try to raise your family in Chicago back then. It's probably a lot like it is now. No offense to anybody in Chicago, but my heart goes out to you because I can't imagine. It's got to be Deadwood ain't got nothing on Chicago in any decade. And we talked a lot about that last night too, about sour soil and all the massacres, and some places just seem to rotate that negative something. That land over there is thirsty for blood. No other way to put it. But one of the biggest ones, not so much on body count and everything else, but it had so many layers to it. And it had Al Capone's name all over it. Everybody knew it on the streets. Everybody knew it in the law enforcement end and the criminal end. Was St. Valentines Day Massacre. And like I said in the beginning of this, it was like Chicago just hit skid marks. And this is a Chicago that was used to seeing bodies in the streets, laying dead in cars, restaurants, but it was always that, but they're just killing each other, Isn't that something we're still hearing? And think about that mindset, and then something happens to make it stop right now, and outrage ensues. And the law enforcement agency, they went over the top to the point of doing a press photo op of laying out the bodies covered in sheets, of course. I thought this was very macabre. covered in sheets, and the guy picks his top guys in the law enforcement, and they're all standing there in suits with their hands up over the bodies, swearing over the bodies that they will not sleep until the organized crime in Chicago was rectified. This is how deep and desperate they got, Steve. Can you imagine that photo op today? And here's the thing. You're doing it over, this is the mind warp. You're doing it over criminals, because the people at the St. Valentines Day massacre, make no mistake, except for the eye doctor that liked to hang out with gangsters and pretend he was one. He really was just an eye doctor that, liked to hang out. He got killed. And the dog, Whiskey, was eventually killed, which breaks my heart, because what that dog saw and went through, again, it's just a sour spot for me in this story. But everybody that was killed that they're swearing over was a criminal, an admitted criminal. We'll swear we'll get the guys who did this and take out organized crime. I can see if it was. I never saw him do that over the bodies of the people at the Iroquois Theater that burnt to the ground because of the fire marshal and the permits and the palms that got greased and the things that got overlooked and the safety things that, not far from this, but they weren't doing over those bodies. We promised that doesn't that make you think? It's a wild picture. You'll see it. But anyway, that's what spawned the whole thing. That's why they went and got Eliot Ness, because of this. I hope I hit the right one. This one's about 15. So again, if Mulder's got to walk, I think this is the right one. How is he? Hi, Nick. I forgot to say hi to Nick. What's wrong with me?
Mulder's back here. He's currently snoring. If you hear him.
Is he? Okay, this is it. This is the right one. Here we go, folks. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Happy Valentine's Day.
February 14, 1929, the year of the Black Bottom. 6-day bicycle races. flagpole sitting and the first flight from Paris to New York. Mickey Mouse makes his screen debut, and Herbert Hoover is inaugurated as the 31st president with the words, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in any land." 6 months later, the New York stock market will crash and bring about the greatest depression in world history. In the city of Chicago, the time is 10:25 a.m. The temperature, 18 above zero.
that you? Hello, boys. Something I can do for you?
Yeah, you can shut up. I'll line up, all of you. Face that wall.
You, over there.
Come on, move.
No way.
Let's go.
You two.
All right, you two, let's go.
Listen, Buster. You better be kidding.
Move.
Nosy flat feet. Wait till they hear about this downtown. Move! Hey! You! You on the car! Let's go. Let's go.
Sir, I'm just a mechanic here.
Let's go.
All I do is work on the automobiles. I don't
Move!
know what to do with these people. Come on.
Move!
Hands on the wall. Lean on it.
That was a rat way to do it, man. That was Capone.
That was brutal, but that's the way they operate.
There you go. There's your mechanic, Vixen. He worked for Meringue's gang. He was part of it. He wasn't a killer, though. Then you had the eye doctor in there, too. Curious. He just hung out with him. He just was there often. Poor guy took the wrong day. It was brutal. Brutal. Business manager. Look at this kid. What is he, 19? Well, he's older. Actually, he's probably not very much older. He just look older.
And indeed, Jack, what this does sound very Twin Peaks. My wife and I are rewatching that. There should never
Yep.
That's excellent music.
Yep.
Great job.
And he was an enforcer, this kid. An enforcer. He didn't die immediately, though. It's the only one that still could talk. Unbelievably so. 3 hours. What do you think he said? Not a damn thing. To the end.
Those Tommy guns are what, 45 caliber then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Brutal. Yep. Those bricks are haunted.
I've seen that wall.
Don't touch those bricks.
If it's still there now, but it was in the Bob Museum in Las Vegas. I saw it. 15 years ago, yes, when I lived in Vegas. Probably longer than I think.
You hear it there too. You hear it sometimes. Where it once stood in that empty courtyard. Horrible. You can hear the dog crying. It's terrible. Who would want to be there? 11 years. He didn't do it all. Yeah. The most severe in history. One of the most. At this time. 48. Syphilis got him. In the end, it was syphilis. There he is. In Miami, Florida.
And when he was in prison, he was in Alcatraz, right? I think I was seeing.
Part of the time. He got moved to Alcatraz. He was number 45 at Alcatraz. He was one of the first ones there.
If you're ever in San Francisco, go do that Alcatraz tour. That place is creepy.
Mm-hmm. And he was haunted there. But the victim of the St. Valentines Day massacre, Jimmy. Yep. He can scream. Other people saw him too. He got in that cell and he taunted Al Capone. Others saw him too. It's an amazing story. There's the bullets. Now, people keep saying, we went in there, we held the bullets. Why? Why do you want to touch this stuff? It blows my mind. Or get a brick from the wall. Everybody who took a brick from the wall either gave it back or had bad luck, lost their businesses, was haunted. Yep, he died in extreme fear. The ghost of the St. Valentine's Day victim. Named Jimmy. Told you. I got the name of the dog wrong though.
That's his cell at Alcatraz, I believe. He didn't have just a cot and a toilet like most.
Yeah. He did.
He had a well-appointed cell.
Yep. And there's Moran. Moran showed up late that day. He was getting a haircut. And one of the guys that were part of the massacre saw a guy go in that looked like Moran and did a false start, and they didn't get him. They didn't get Moran. And I got the name of the dog wrong. I always call him Whiskey. His name was Highball. Poor dog. He lived for a couple of weeks. They said he was so messed up they had to put him down, and it was just awful. There was a time, flappers, they had some pretty dresses. Those beaded dresses, man, they were pretty. Wild. Think of the town, they call it the Magic Mile in Chicago. You know, there's posters of it. You just look at that, and I look over that, and I think, what if I was a negative energy, fear-eating humanoid creature, I'd be sitting on a building there too, just sucking all that in. Yeah, great song, great music. Smoke Jacket Blues by Track Tribe. Track Tribe's a great group, man. I'm telling you, YouTube Audio Library. Track Tribe's there. They're all over YouTube. Good music. Just nice cigar. Maybe a little Southern Comfort. Deep Corona on the rock. That's a good drink. That's a Sicilian kiss. Perfect if you're going to, research St. Valentine's Day Massacre and gangsters. It's a good drink. It'll curl your toes. Southern Comfort, equal parts. Southern Comfort and Di Serono has to be the good amaretto. The other stuff would just give you a headache. So what do you think, Steve? That was enough to,
Ain't that some shit.
Ain't that some shit. There's so much about St. Valentine's Day Massacre that are just like, it blows your mind. You know, the fact that the one guy on the stakeout, thought he saw Moran go in, so they did that false start, which saved Moran's life. That little bit of hesitation, it's been rumored that he didn't get tipped off, that for whatever reason, he was late, and they jumped early, but to go in there, and two of them were dressed as cops, and of course, this is what the neighborhood sees, and a couple plain clothes. Line everybody up. They think it's just a bootleg bust, right? And not only did they shoot him, once that actually happened that way, and they, how they know it? Not just because of the bullet holes and where everybody was hit. Again, this is the dawn of criminology, where they're really starting to study these things, and they're trying to get an idea of how everything went down and who shot who and what weapon, who was what, because those 2 Tommy guns that were found at what's his face's house, that tied it everything to Capone. He worked for Capone.
Yep.
Capone might have been in Florida. And again, a little side caveat here. I'm hearing recently from new documentation, a couple of people putting out there that he wasn't in Miami, Florida. He was in jail in Pennsylvania. So I'm looking into that. I haven't found anything collaborate that, but I thought I'd put it out there in case somebody else hears it. You can kind of sort it for yourself. It shouldn't be that hard to research, but I have not dug into it. It was something I found out recently. I thought I'd throw it out there. Just like correcting how I keep naming a poor dog. But for some reason, I think he should like whiskey better than a highball. It sounds a little bit too, But that dog, that poor dog, he belonged to the mechanic that you were talking about, Vixen. And he was chained to that freaking truck, and he couldn't get away, and it just breaks my heart. And it's awful. He was so messed up. That one police officer I showed the picture, he took him, and he was the one that was trying to, but back then they didn't know kind of what we know now, and wouldn't, I guess just dangerous dog. They put him down, it's terrible. But anyway, the whole thing was terrible. I think it was low down dirty. I think it was certainly not necessary. I mean,
kind of like the murder of Bonnie and Clyde. That was an ambush and a murder.
Yeah.
They didn't try to take them in. They were afraid of them because they had killed some cops. So they just took those kids out.
Well, that's just exactly the point, Steve. It's you got the public looking at this, the public that, like I said, that are seeing people, another one got shot in his own restaurant. Yeah, isn't that terrible? Oh, look at the big parade and all the flowers, and everybody's showing off and trying to, the boss this and outdo each other and the big fancy funerals. And it's very, almost, the reality of it is almost like Godfather on steroids. And you know what I mean? It's just, it was more showy. It was more, and more grotesque, and people were used to seeing this. They were used to ducking and covering, and gunshots and things, and it did get bad to the point where there was drive-bys and hits with Tommy guns and things like you saw there in that tape. It absolutely did. But that's when Al Capone turned up things, and there was obvious gangland gang on gang kind of stuff going on, and people kept making excuses for it, either because they were scared or, like Steve said, that Robin Hood thing. And at least it's not me, but St. Valentines Day massacre, that was it. It did it. And as you saw in that tape, came down from Hoover, who was president at the time, and he said, get Capone. It's over. So pressure, shit rolls downhill, right, Steve?
Absolutely.
so there it went, and that's why everybody scrambled. That's how Ness got in there, and he went to work, and he certainly did. Like I said, he chipped away at it. He there is a scene in the movie. I'm no scholar on the 87 movie with Kevin Costner. I saw it a long time ago. There were some people in there I just loved. I hoped the stuff was true. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I hope that one was true. And you look into it and go, man, it was just, literary license or whatever, spark threw some sprinkles in there. Hey, William, welcome in. But the craziest stuff is, these people, that poor driver, Belize. And what happened with him is he got ambushed. He was the driver, and he got ambushed. Somehow he got, lured into, somebody got him. Word out there, the suspicion at the time is, it's get backs from Capone. He was trying to, grab him, so they tightened stuff up, and, and that's what would happen. It was a big chess game. Ness and the crew and the Untouchables would make a move, and Capone would make a move. And, it seems like it was the most we hear about it. It seems like it was maybe, almost like a decade's worth of stuff. But to think about all this stuff happened in little under 2 years, between the two.
Yeah, it was a short time span in
the
landscape of things.
It blows your mind. So he's doing all this, and then you hear, he's testing out the waters. And I thought some of the things that I found most interesting in all of that was when Ness was first starting out, trying to get a feel for things, he has to go and have meetings with these guys, meeting them at restaurants and then these, everything else. And he's meeting with gangsters. And, that's when they're trying to tiddlywink, bribe him here and there. They're drinking. And one of the rules was you could drink on the job. You could not drink off the job, because if you drank off the job, you were drinking illegal booze for the fun of it, for recreation, and you're breaking the law. But if you were drinking on the clock, you were doing an investigation and you were working undercover. See, this is one of those
nice little
interesting little, balances that they've got there, and these they're turning these slippery slopes of, it's the whole era, this whole time is just saturated in this, because you've got the temperance women's movement that are just trying to get the rent paid, get the kids fed. They don't want their husbands, working in coal mines or whatever it is, or the industry, or wherever they're working, and then blowing their check in the bars because they're making it easy on the streets for this, and they're encouraging it. And, everybody's trying to feel everything out, and you can side with them, and then they come a little bit too far. Well, now we're going to make it a law. Well, you see what happens when you do that. It makes for more criminals, because just like you stop anybody when they want to have something, they're going to find a way. And now it's illegal, and now it's crime. And, it's crazy. It's that, that thing. And here you got Eliot Ness drinking, taking bottles from some of the things and giving out to friends. He's going to ballroom dancing. He's socializing with most of, depending on the wives and their personalities. There was one, I think the second one, that he seemed to be most social with, and out, she liked to dance too, and things like that. And he was very charismatic, but in between, he did cheat on one or two, I think I heard. And it was kind of sticky, but that's, they got divorced right after. It was like she heard about it, she's gone. That's it, but so you can't say perfect, but you say damn good. I mean, this guy was great at organizing and throwing things together. Another one was he wasn't afraid to make mistakes. He learned from them. I like that about him. He went in trying to be all 5'9" of him, and he's in there and he's trying to, whatever he's talking to these gangsters about, trying to weasel his way in and find out information and stuff. And they're talking in Italian, and one of the guys that's with him is his interpreter. And he kind of pulls Ness away, and he goes, well, why? What did he say? And he said he's asking his boss if he wants him to stab you in the back with his knife in Italian. And that scared Ness, and his hair went up, and he was like, whoa. And that was when he got a taste of how dangerous and how deep he was stepping into it. There were times where he used to send his wife away because he was scared they were getting threats, and threats on his life, and so many other things. It seems obvious. Of course there would be, but extremely interesting. And like I said, the craziest things are the true things. The saddest one is, like I said, toward the end there, and I think that was a real blow and a real crush. And to have all these decades of people saying that they never met and he wasn't even there, is a kind of an added kick. And I'm glad it's coming out now that he was. I don't know why that's so important. They never met, but I think it's important to know so you can discern what they're showing us later on in the movies and everything else. It's like, this is entertainment. They've taken this, like so many characters, Steve. Gosh, we can sit here and name characters that they've taken and turned to legend because of one little Davy and Goliath, Paul Bunyan, Davy Crockett, what's his face? I can't think of any, but you know what I mean. The names that are turned to legend because of one thing, like Al Capone, you got to take the, And again, when I was in high school, I really kind of thought about Al and said, he was kind of like a Robin Hood kind of guy, because he did that soup kitchen and he did these things. And I studied a lot about him.
Gangsters were they took care of the people in the community.
Yeah.
When I lived in Vegas, I knew some people that had worked out there in the old days when the mob ran the city. And they said, that ran a lot better when the mob was in charge than it did after the corporations took over. They said, we always got a Christmas bonus. You always had the car show up with toys for your kids, and things like that. They kept the public opinion on their side.
Absolutely.
That kept mouths shut.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't blame. There's always been something about Robert Stack. He's always had it together, and to see him there like this in his vest and his, his white sleeves, all business, and that Tommy gun, all business. Again, this is very much like I was talking about last night with Jim Mars was all upset because Stephen King came out with that new JFK Back in Time thing, interesting story. It was a great story. But I understood where he was coming from. He says, now this generation that sees that will get it put into their mind again that it's Oswald did it by himself, because that's what it's going to say, and it irked him because he had worked his decades to get the truth out, and now we're backstepping, and that's what I think about when I look at this. But I also understand why people would get all excited. I mean, it's a striking look, you know what I'm saying? Since it's not Eliot Ness, but that's what I mean. It just kind of appeals to all, all things, But again, it's close to the truth, but it's not the truth, and it's not the image, but the image that there really is at any of this stuff. But the real one, it kind of is, and I mean, it's so to look at that baby face and think that he walked in there after only being 2 years working on the probation squad in Chicago, and was a huge part of, and a lot of wild circumstance, right? With, what's his name again? Wilson, the one they did that movie again. Go watch that movie and let me know how it was. With the accountants and the people working on the taxes and the numbers and the money, right? And he's over here chipping away and taking cars and taking money and dumping, liquor in the street and all this other stuff and chipping away at Al Capone's money. He put a hurting on him. He really did. And to think that he would wind up with going through all that and then going to Cleveland as safety director and doing everything he did there, which I will talk about next weekend, and going through the Torso murder serial killer case, and then, finishing off there and winding up almost, like a Tesla, destitute, penniless. He died owing $7,000 and some dollars. His advance on the book that you see here, the cover of, was $200. When he died with 2 checks from I want to say locksmith company. He was working in the security department for it. I believe that's correct. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But he did have 2 checks from that company, who he's trying to help them fix their books too and work, because he has a business degree. He's trying to sort and find a way. Finds out that they're in the rears, and he can't even cash the 2 checks he's got in his pocket from the company he works for because there's not sufficient funds to cover the checks, see? And they're in his wallet, found on his body. He walked home from work a couple blocks, walked into his house, walked into the kitchen to get a drink of water, got chest pains, apparently. His wife's in the garden, heard the and boom, dead on the floor. 54, I believe. And this is his, what he wound up. A man like this wound up with this in the paper to announce his death. Eliot Ness dies. And I think it's Cowdensport. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry, PA. Pennsylvania. Eliot Ness, 54. Yep, I was right, 54. Got something right. Cleveland safety director from 1935 to 1942. Okay, so this is after Capone. and defeated, I hate this part, Republican mayor candidate in 1947, died of a heart ailment at his home there Thursday. For several years, Ness was a chairman of the board of the Diebold Safe and Lock Company and in Canton, Ohio. So after Cleveland, Ohio.
All the stuff he's been through, they gave him about an inch of press there.
This is what they call it, and they have to stick in there that he ran for mayor in 1947. Well, by the time he ran, by the time the poor dude ran for mayor in Cleveland, he'd missed he kept missing his doorways. It was like he had a doorway open, and for some reason he'd go around it and he'd take the stairs. And then he'd get to that floor and realize, he wanted to take the elevator, but it was already on another floor and he missed it. That was kind of with Eliot Ness, with the timing on things. He was talked into, I listened to an interview with a good friend of his that remembered having a conversation right there in the house he was still living in he said in that very living room, Eliot Ness decided to run for mayor in 1947 for Cleveland. And he had worked as this safety director, did amazing things for Cleveland. When you hear, it'll blow your mind, right? But this torso killer and the things he had to go through with the torso killer and everything else, and the things that came to fruition with that, it really drained him. And on top of that, he's getting older and he's living hard. He's drinking hard. He's dancing hard. He's, getting married. He's the third wife there in the car at the bottom. They adopt a son with one of them. I think it was this one. Yes, it was this one. They finally adopt a child, okay, and a little boy, and he manages to find a wonderful time for him. He does at the end of his life here. Cats in the cradle, yeah, but I think he lived just long enough to realize that. And when he did adopt the son, he took him fishing, and the son said his memories were of fishing and boating and things like that with his dad, and taught him love for reading and things like that, and similar interests. And he lived to be 30. He died of a leukemia, and he is, let me see if I can share this real quick. And we're about to get out of here. But I can share this really quick with you. Because I was so pleased to find something on the sun. So here he is here. Let me see. Can you guys see that? That is his son there, Robert Eliot Ness. And he was born in 1946. I forget how old he was when he was adopted. I think he was around 8. And he was adopted by it was the third wife, yeah. And he passed in 1976. He had a form of leukemia, but he seems to have very fond memories of his father and really looked up to him as a hero. And he's 30 years old. And he had been married and for about 5 years to his wife Sharon in Cleveland Heights. So still in Cleveland. So I found that very interesting. The mom outlived them both.
No. It's like we lost Cisco. Sorry, I was checking my messages there and listening to Cisco, and it went quiet. And that's why. There she comes back. Sorry, caught me unawares there. I was checking my messages, listening to you, and I'm on the screen.
I caught you. I lost all my stuff, but oh well. There you go. So Eliot Ness, man, so far so good. I mean, that's your timeline. Again, he was there. I can't remember whether I showed you the footage of whether or not when he was standing at the train station. Did you guys get to see that? If not, I'll show you next Sunday. We'll use that as kind of like a refresher. But the amazing thing is the absolute brutality, the bloodthirsty crime, whatever caused it, prohibition, obviously. But, everything, there was stuff there before, There was this, it seems inevitable growing pains of any city that's feeling itself out when you have that many people on top of each other, and then you have world events such as wars and things like that. It affects the population, and it's interesting to see how different places go in certain directions. And you have because you can't say things like this don't happen in the Midwest. I give you Bonnie and Clyde. I give you Dillinger was all over the Midwest. I mean, so many, you can't name a spot that didn't have its story. But it does seem to be places, Steve, that have an overabundance of a certain type of energy. To close us out tonight, tell me what you think about that. Again, Chicago, we've talked about it many a time, and not to single it out as the only place that's like this by any means, but it certainly is one of them, I think. The whole damn place.
There's some kind of dark energy there, and it's in other places too, but it just, like you said, it's kind of stuck in a loop there. You have
like a New Orleans
ongoing violence and things. It's been there since Chicago, back there around the time of when Ms. O'Leary's cow kicked the lantern over and burned the place to the ground. Then
absolutely,
that was the start of it, I think. Ongoing curse.
Yep, which I dug on and also found out that also didn't happen. That was she got smeared one way and up that side. They took her because she was an immigrant, and she was, I forget exactly from where. It was very popular right there. It was like the Shantyville, and they were all there making the best of it. And it was a bunch of people that were having a party in this. I don't want to say it was a tenement. It was more like shacks pushed up against each other. And they were having a party, and she can even remember hearing, they were playing fiddle music and all this other stuff, and they were out there outside smoking, and they think it was somebody like threw a cigar stub.
Heard a guy speak on that back when I was in college, and he said that the night that happened, there were fires all across the country. It wasn't just in Chicago. There was an outbreak of strange fires. So what was that all about? That'd be they're looking into maybe some kind of paranormal or supernatural activity there. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in synchronicity.
Yeah. And, I also believe that, like I said, there's the more we look at it, there are places like this that just have that kind of energy. And you can't add in, the population and the energy of the people and everything like that, because all that energy compounded in one spot, you're going to have that expelling. Energy's got to come out in a certain way, so it comes out in this abundance of great music. And you'll find great music coming out of these places, great food. It's going to manifest in this creative way, but it's also going to manifest in a very negative way for these people that have this energy and don't quite know what to do with it, and wind up in desperate times, desperate situations, surroundings. You're not just the culture, but the the atmosphere and the times and all of this perfect storm of things that are happening. But it just seems to be in certain places there's this overabundance, and Chicago is one of them. I would say New York is another, but in a different way. It's a totally different flavor. It's different, not better or worse or better, but different flavor.
Just
and so is New Orleans. And so is probably anything else you're going to bring, you could bring up,
And a lot of places where blues music is popular.
Mm-hmm.
You got Chicago blues, you got St. Louis, you got New Orleans, you got
St. Louis blues,
other places in the South.
Absolutely. And like I said too, it's the food, it's the art, it's and everything has a flavor, and it's palpable. It's absolutely, you can feel the difference. And I think I can't speak on being in Chicago, but decades of sitting and reading stories and journals, and again, it's like the Civil War with me. For some reason, organized crime in Chicago and New York and the things that were going on in the Bonnie and Clydes in the Midwest and all that was all over it most of my life, just like ghosts. And it never ceases to amaze me. The character changes, the lengths, a criminal will not go past the line. I'll do this, and this, but nope, won't do that. and a lot of that is the loyalty to each other as a team, as a group. You had your rats and you had your betrayals and all that. Absolutely, you had that too. But that there's any of that, I won't cross that line. You had this young man here, the mechanic, the one who owned Highball, right? I'm just a mechanic. I'm just here. That happened. He did try to hide and they found him. And it's a sad story, and he just thought he was going to get arrested. The fact that they could do that, not that you have to drive something like that home, but just to understand how bad it is and how I feel it would be so disrespectful. Looking at that wall, I guess I must feel different than some people because I couldn't put my hands on it. I certainly can't believe it was in a men's restroom for I don't know how many decades, like 20 years, wasn't it, Steve? I could have that wrong, but I think I'm close. Right. And then they had to rescue it, put it in a museum. But people got bricks from this. They wanted souvenirs. Again, it's one of those stories where this is the public that's doing it.
Dipping their handkerchiefs in Lincoln's blood at Ford's Theater.
Right. The same public that's outraged is, buying bricks and bidding on this, place when it was torn down and stuff. It's crazy, I guess I just, look at it different. Every single one of those have a story. Bricks, if you got a brick or if you did this or that, there's been multiple ghosts out of St. Valentine's Day massacre, and nothing as more famous than Jimmy, who was a victim of the St. Valentine's Day massacre and haunted Al Capone. I'm full on believing that. It'd be hard to convince me that didn't happen. There's so many witnesses to that, and hearing him scream. And some say, well, he had syphilis. He was losing his mind. Absolutely true. But he saw him before that started to kick in. It's an easy thing to just wipe away, And again, who's to say if you're not losing your mind, you don't see spirits, The dead see spirits all the time. You're getting closer to the other side. You see spirits, right, Steve?
I think so.
Yep. There you go. Another good show, Steve. This was fun.
Yeah, indeed.
How much fun. Eliot Ness, he's more than you remembered him to be, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Quite a bit.
And you were just larger than life, and you only get the tip of the iceberg from pop culture and things. There's a lot more to the man. Very multifaceted individual. Led an interesting life and a tragic end. Again,
so many. And I think that it's good to do due diligence on this end of it because I think it's very interesting. Those two young men who wrote that book, also the one that you mentioned, what was the name of that again? The Demon of...
I just lost the name of it.
And I just listened to his interview too. What great guy. Good interview.
Yeah, Stash Shower is the guy's name, but I can't remember. He's American Demon, I think was the name of this. American Demon.
There you go.
There you go. For America's Jack the Ripper.
There you go.
I think that came out, I want to say like 2022. Not sure. It's fairly recent. Yeah. It's a good book.
Yeah, it is. I think old Eric over there at Most Notorious Podcast, I think he did an interview with him too. It was good. And a lot of these, the two guys that I showed tonight, you were talking about their book. That's an excellent one.
Here for a future episode, if we're going to delve into this across.
Yeah, and I'd love to get the lady too that's doing the Eliot Ness. Well, I wouldn't say tour, but it's kind of tour. You can see her. She's been doing it since like 2007. I found all kinds of stuff on her, but she's the one who had the information about the son that I found, and she gets all of this, and she wants to tell the truth too. And she did something I thought was really cool that we'll talk about next weekend, that we get into the Cleveland end of this. And I'm trying to find something to go out on here so I can put some of these comments up. But Steve, tell us where to see you this week, mate. It's been fun.
Well, yeah, it's been a blast as always. This week, let's see. I've got coffee stream Wednesday morning, and then Wednesday evening
with Dunkin' Donuts coffee, unsolicited, unprovoked sponsorship.
Thanks, Duncan. Unprovoked, I like that. And then Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, Lee G and I are kicking off our new channel, From Beyond. I put a link there in.
Oh wow! Oop, I'm sorry.
Classic, vintage,
From Beyond,
retro UFO coverage.
Oh,
for
wow.
the first episode, we're going to be talking about the Betty and Barney Hill case from here in New England. We got a short movie to watch.
That one creeped me out.
It and take questions from the chat or let the chat comment on what they just watched and their take on it. It should be a lot of fun. Go ahead and subscribe. There's no content over there yet.
American Demon?
But it's I think
that sounds like fun, Steve.
Just under 3,500 subscribers. So come on over, join the fray before it kicks off.
You just keep cranking them out, honey.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And all my podcasts are on Spreaker, the audio version of Among the Missing, and Midnight Mailbox, which is listener stories, and Ain't That Some Shit, kind of a new way of Paul Harvey take over there.
Yeah.
And of course, the radio show. You can go hear Cisco over there on the latest episode.
The Paranormal.
Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero Radio Network. Everything out there.
He's going to think I'm crazy. I've never met him. Clive.
Clyde?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's a good guy. I've been on his show. I've been in the studio with the man when I lived in Portland. He's a big dude.
Yeah. Well, he's got a good show. So, all right, guys, listen, I love y'all. And what's content coming? I'm trying to catch all this, but it's going so fast.
She's talking about From Beyond. That's
subscribing now. There we go. Frozen subscribing now.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. If you
love y'all. Thanks for being here.
Cases. Yeah, thanks everybody.
So tell me before you run out of here, chat, as you're going out, let me know. Do you feel the same, or do you feel like you a little different about how you feel about Eliot Ness so far? It's been 2 episodes
about Eliot Ness.
Yeah,
still a lot more.
We're finding Eliot. We're finding. I think he deserves it. I mean, gosh, we spend so much time on gangsters and Dillingers and Bonnies and Clydes and axe murderers and everybody else. We need to pick a good one now and then, right? You know, and he's a very interesting character. So there we go. Thanks, Jack. We appreciate you being here, my friend. So hit the like on the way out. Try to be decent humans. I know y'all are light workers, you know. If you need a recharge, do that in your own way. And I love you so much. Remember to come back here next weekend and we're going to finish this up. This one's going to be a hard one, man. This is the Torso Killers. We've got a lot going on there. So see you back here for that, Steve. I know you ain't scared.
Nope, I ain't scared.
You're going to be here with me. Love you, my friend. My hugs to Mulder and Nick, and good night, everybody.
I'll tell her you said hi, and we're supposed to sleep back here. Good night, everybody. Steve, further on down the trail.
I love you, sugar. Good night, everybody.